The town of Ashridge was the kind of place that faded off most maps, once a thriving military zone, now just half-forgotten barracks and sealed buildings fenced in by time. Officer Ethan Cole, 28, fresh transfer from City Precinct, had been sent on a routine asset inspection. Mark condemned structures, check for unauthorized entry, report back. It was a Tuesday. No one expected anything unusual on a Tuesday. Block 17C stood at the far edge of the compound. An old training house with moss on the walls, rust on the iron gate, and a broken sign that barely read K9, active duty. Ethan paused. The place wasn't even on his updated list. But what truly made him stop was the dog. A large Belgian Malinois, still, silent, sitting just beyond the rusted gate as if it had never moved in years. No barking, no growl, just watching. "Hey there, boy," Ethan said softly, hand resting near his holster just in case. The dog didn't move, didn't blink, just stared back with eyes that weren't hostile, just impossibly alert. The dog wore a faded collar. Burnt into the leather was a single name, Max, and below it a serial code mostly scratched out. Ethan reached for his radio but hesitated. There was something sacred about how still this moment was, something not meant to be broken by static and paperwork. He walked the perimeter. No broken locks, no tracks, only a pair of boot prints, old, sunken into dried mud, and a bowl of water beside the step changed recently. But no one had lived here for years, not officially, not legally. The records back at station read K9 Unit 9-17, disbanded 2020, last known handler Sergeant Isaac Monroe, status MIA, presumed KIA, incident sealed, no follow-up. Ethan stood still. The dog Max didn't move, didn't beg, didn't wag his tail. Because he wasn't waiting for food, he was waiting for a command, or the man who gave it. For the next 3 days, Officer Ethan Cole found himself rerouting his patrol through Sector 17C. It wasn't standard. It wasn't required. But something about that dog, the silence, the stationarity, the way it didn't beg or run, kept tugging at the part of him that still believed not everything forgotten is lost. Each time he passed, the dog was there. Same position, same stare, no leash, no visible food source, no sign of being fed. But Max looked neither starved nor weak. He looked ready. Like someone might shout, "Go," and he'd still know where to run. Day 4. Ethan brought water. He poured it into the rusted bowl already there. The dog sniffed it once, then looked up not with gratitude but calculation. "You're not just surviving, are you?" Ethan muttered. "You're stationed." That night he went into the town archives, typed K9 Unit 917, Isaac Monroe. Most files returned restricted access, sealed by internal operations, except one. A training log last updated March 4, 2020. It listed only one detail under Max's file, behavioral conditioning. Response to silent hand commands. Note: handler reports unusually high memory retention. Unit reacts to coded movement sequences. No barking, no verbal trigger required. Status: active deployment. Assignment classified. The next day, Ethan returned. He stood on the other side of the gate. Then slowly he raised his right hand, curled 2 fingers, and tilted his wrist down. The same way he remembered seeing handlers do in old police training footage. Max stood up. After 4 days of complete stillness, the dog responded like someone had just whispered in his ear. He walked up to the gate, sat, stared at Ethan, then lowered his head and let out a soft, guttural breath. Not a growl, not fatigue, a sign of recognition. Ethan's heart pounded. Max wasn't just a dog left behind. He was still on duty, and someone had never called him off. The Ashridge precinct had long stopped talking about Sergeant Isaac Monroe. Officially, he went missing during a deep surveillance op targeting arms trafficking routes through the county. Unofficially, no one looked too hard. Because Monroe was the type who asked the wrong questions too often, too loudly. Ethan sat in the corner of the archive room screen, glowing pale against the dark. No photographs, no formal obituary, not even a retirement record. But something unusual caught his eye. A single line redacted in every internal report. Last GPS ping, 38.21, 1 to Groznen, 122, 182 to W. Classified coordinates. Note attached handler last seen with K9 Max. Unit presumed KIA. No retrieval authorized. Why no retrieval? Why leave behind a trained K9 federal property without even securing the site? It didn't add up. That night, Ethan drove back to Sector 17C. The wind was cold, but Max was still there, seated by the gate as always. Ethan brought a flashlight and something else, a photo. An old training group image he found buried under a logbook. There were 5 handlers. Monroe stood in the middle. Young, sharp eyes. One hand resting on Max's neck like they were part of the same spine. Ethan held up the photo. Max stood, walked forward, and did something Ethan hadn't expected. He whined, just once, short, and then rested his chin on the iron gate directly under Monroe's face in the picture. Not memory, recognition. Ethan took a deep breath. Whatever happened to Sergeant Monroe wasn't just lost in duty. Someone had made sure he wouldn't be found. And Max had stayed behind. Not waiting for rescue, waiting for justice. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the numbers. 1582 W. He checked every internal system, every federal map, even geological databases. Nothing. No structures, no reports, no terrain tags. Only a stretch of unlabeled woodland outside Ashridge marked vaguely as Environmental Hazard Zone by the state. No trespassing, no explanation. And yet, the satellite view revealed something odd. A perfectly squared clearing in the trees. Too sharp to be natural. Too clean to be an accident. He copied the coordinates to his phone, grabbed his field gear, and instinctively called out to Max. "Come on, partner. Let's go see what they didn't want us to find." Max didn't hesitate. He leapt into the passenger seat like he'd been waiting 3 years for that command. The drive was silent. The forest got thicker. Reception faded. The road turned from paved to gravel, and then to nothing. When they reached the point marked by the GPS, Max jumped out before Ethan even turned off the engine. He ran forward, tail stiff, nose low to the ground. He was tracking. He was remembering. 200 yards in, they found it. A sunken concrete bunker, overgrown, barely visible, but unmistakably military. Faint letters still clung to rusted metal near the sealed door, OP silence. K9 access only. Ethan's pulse surged. This wasn't just a training site. This was a black ops facility. One no longer acknowledged. Max stepped forward and sat at the door. Same way he sat at the gate of the house. Waiting, ready. But as Ethan reached for his radio to log the discovery, it hissed, then died. Dead battery, number signal interference, and then his phone buzzed once. Unknown number, no caller ID. He answered, a deep voice, calm, too calm. "You've gone far enough, Officer Cole. We let the dog live. That was our mercy. Walk away, or you'll find out what his handler didn't." Click. Line went dead. Ethan stood frozen. Max growled. Low. Deep. A sound of warning, but not fear. Ethan turned to him. "Is this why you waited? Because no one else ever dared come this far, Max didn't move. But Ethan knew. He'd just opened something no one wanted opened again. And now, they both had targets on their backs. You can burn the paper. You can delete the footage. But if a dog remembers, the truth never really dies. Ethan returned to the precinct just before dawn. His boots were caked in mud, his heart pounding with something colder than fear, certainty. Max followed. Limber, silent, a shadow at his heel. But Ethan could feel it. The dog was more alert than usual, like he knew they were being watched. But inside the station was oddly quiet. Too quiet. The front desk was empty, the coffee still warm, and the door to the records room slightly ajar. He stepped inside. The cabinet labeled Retired Ops, Handler Archives had been forced open, not clumsily, professionally. Inside the folder he had checked just days earlier, the one with Isaac Monroe's photo, his training logs, and the coordinate file was gone. Replaced by a blank sheet with 2 words typed, Dead Center, Restricted, Reclassified. Ethan closed the drawer, turned, and saw a figure waiting in the hallway. Captain Ron Weaver, chief of the precinct, a man with perfect ties and polished shoes and eyes that never blinked more than necessary. Officer Cole Weaver said, voice calm. Too calm. Bit early to be digging through ghosts, don't you think? Ethan stayed still. So did Max, standing protectively between them. I had clearance. You had access, Weaver corrected. That file is now part of an active federal case. Above your level. What kind of federal case requires deleting someone's existence? The kind where asking that question becomes dangerous, Cole. Dangerous for who Ethan shot back. Me or the ones who made Monroe disappear. A long pause. Then Weaver leaned in. You're a good cop. Don't be stupid. There's no medal for chasing dead men and loyal dogs. You're wrong, Ethan said, his voice like gravel. Some dogs remember better than men. That night, Ethan parked his car in a different neighborhood, switched phones, destroyed his station-issued laptop, and copied all he had onto a separate drive, including GPS logs, archived maps, and the one photo of Monroe with Max. Max watched, didn't whine. But when Ethan zipped the go bag closed, the dog stood not as a pet, but as a partner. Because the black file may be gone, but the memory was alive. And somewhere out there, so was the truth. The message came just before midnight. Encrypted. No sender ID, no subject line. Just a blinking cursor and one line of text. If the dog's still alive, the program isn't dead. Ethan's blood froze. He stared at the screen, rereading it again and again. No instructions, no request, no threat. Just a statement and a signature. Whistler. He hadn't heard that name in years. Whistler wasn't a person. It was a code name used by an anonymous source who had once leaked intel on internal misconduct within law enforcement's experimental K-9 division. Their real identity, unknown. But Monroe had trusted them. That much Ethan remembered from the training notes. And now, after years of silence, they'd reached out again. Not to him. To Max. Max sat at the foot of the bed, alert. The room was dark, but his ears twitched. Eyes fixed on nothing, as if waiting for a sound Ethan couldn't hear. Ethan whispered, "You knew this would come back, didn't you?" Max stood up, walked to the door, sat again, waiting. That's when Ethan heard it, faint but undeniable, a whistle. Not through the air, but through a speaker, hidden in the corner of the laptop, ultrasonic, almost imperceptible. Max's ears perked, then he moved, deliberate, focused, like something ancient had been reawakened inside him. The whistle ended. A map appeared on the screen. No words, no icons, just a blinking red circle, a storage compound miles outside Ashridge, underneath a timestamp. Row 2, Wazero one time only. Ethan checked his watch. He had 1 hour and 27 minutes. He grabbed his bag, locked the door, looked down at Max. We don't know what's waiting there. Max didn't blink, didn't hesitate. He walked beside Ethan to the car, because he never needed orders. He only needed the truth to still be alive. The USB drive was encrypted, but not beyond reach. Ethan slipped it into an offline laptop, eyes darting to Max, who sat by the door, ears, alert, body coiled. He hadn't moved since they left the compound, but something in him had. He wasn't just guarding anymore, he was anticipating. The screen lit up, Ghost K9 protocol reactivated, warning access triggers monitor trace. A soft click, then another. Outside, gravel shifted. Max stood instantly, low growl, tail stiff, one paw lifted. They were not alone anymore. Ethan yanked the drive, shoved it into his jacket, grabbed his bag. Max was already at the back exit. Where to, buddy? Ethan whispered. Max took 2 steps, paused, looked over his shoulder, tilted his head left. A signal. Ethan followed. They didn't run through the trees. They ran through the creek, ankle-deep, cold, silent. Max was choosing the terrain. Max was erasing the scent. Whoever was coming, they'd trained Max's generation. They thought they knew his patterns. They didn't know what losing Monroe had turned him into. 2 minutes later, the first drone zipped through the trees. Silent, high speed, thermal-seeking. But Max had led Ethan into a culvert, an old irrigation pipe choked with moss and cold stone. Ethan crouched, panting, shaking. Max didn't breathe heavy. He simply watched the sky through slats. When the drone passed, Max moved. Fast, precise, zigzagging through fallen logs, not randomly, but along a trail designed to trip motion sensors. Ethan realized Max wasn't running. He was drawing them in. At the old ranger station near the river bend, Max halted. He sniffed the air once, then turned back. Ethan stayed behind the doorway. 3 silhouettes emerged from the woods. Unmarked gear, no badges, no insignia. They didn't call out. They didn't aim. They listened for breathing. Max had doubled back silent and came in from behind. The first man turned too late. A tackle, a sharp growl. No bite, just fear. Enough for Ethan to take control. Within minutes, the field team was disoriented and gone. Max returned, scratched twice at Ethan's boot. Not injured, not afraid, just waiting for the next move. Ethan knelt. You knew they'd come. You planned for it. Max didn't answer. He just sat again like he had outside the house, outside the compound. Only now Ethan understood. That stillness wasn't passivity. It was calculation. And the moment the right person showed up, Max had activated. Not like a weapon, like a memory designed to protect itself. The encrypted USB now backed up, decoded and isolated in Ethan's apartment, 3 blocks from the edge of Ashridge. No signal, no connection. Only one folder for whoever stays. Inside, a single audio file, titled Monroe Final MP3. Ethan played it, and Max slowly walked over and lay down, not resting, listening. If you're hearing this, I'm probably gone, but Max is not, and that matters more. The voice cracked. No longer the soldier from the training videos. This was a man, tired, hunted, certain. They called it Ghost K9. Said we were building loyalty-based tracking systems. Truth is, they were building disposable intelligence through animals, through us. A pause. Max was the only one who failed one test, and that saved him. When they told him to attack a civilian, he hesitated, looked at me, waited. That hesitation meant he was broken, but I knew better. That wasn't failure. That was judgment. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. He looked at Max, who stared at the floor still as stone, but his ears were pressed back. His tail barely moved. He remembered. I couldn't save the others. I couldn't save myself. But I saved him by giving him one last command. Stay. Wait. If someone comes who listens, who looks you in the eyes and doesn't ask for obedience but offers trust, go with him. Ethan's hands trembled. That's you, I hope. Not a soldier, not a spy. Just someone who still knows the difference between a trained dog and a loyal soul. The message ended. No explosion. No reveal of weapons or conspiracies. Just a man telling the truth, and a dog still waiting to be heard. Ethan shut the laptop. Max stood. There were no tears, just understanding. They weren't running anymore. They were carrying something now. Not evidence, a name, a final command, and the weight of someone who stayed behind, so others could get out. Ethan walked back into the Ashridge precinct at 08:47 a.m. Max walked beside him. No leash, no hesitation, just presence steady, silent, undeniable. The room quieted. Some recognized the dog. Most recognized the story now circling like wildfire online, an anonymous upload from a secure account, Monroe's recording documents from the compound, and a list of names once buried under internal reclassification. But nothing hit harder than the footage Max sitting by a rusted door. Max activating a scanner 3 years dead. Max returning not to a handler, but to a promise. Captain Weaver met them at the end of the hallway. Expression unreadable, his badge on, his power cracked but not yet collapsed. You made a mistake, Cole. No, Ethan said. You did. He placed the USB on the desk. You thought Monroe was the message, but Max was always the proof. Weaver said nothing, and for once, he looked away first. 2 weeks later, a public inquiry began. Ashridge Precinct was reassigned under federal supervision. All files related to Project Ghost K9 were released to oversight. The name Sergeant Isaac Monroe was reinstated, his badge returned, posthumous honors granted. But no ceremony felt more real than the moment Max was given full recognition as an operative K9 retired with distinction, not silence. Ethan didn't ask for reassignment. He didn't take interviews. He simply asked for one thing: let him stay with me, not as a witness, as my partner. Request approved. The last scene, a small rural patrol car, a calm road. Max curled in the passenger seat, ears half up, tail flicking with every new sound. Ethan glanced at him. Where to next, old boy? Max looked ahead. Didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because now he wasn't waiting anymore. He was home. Thank you for staying until the very last moment of a story that wasn't about victory, but about a promise never abandoned. About a dog who never left his post for 3 long years. And about a man quiet enough to listen and brave enough to walk into a memory others chose to forget. Maybe in real life there isn't always a Max. But if there's ever been something or someone that's waited for you to return, please don't let them wait forever in silence. If this story touched something in you, share it or send it to someone you believe needs to be reminded. Loyalty when unbetrayed might just be the most beautiful thing we have left. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to follow more stories like this, where it's not bullets, but eyes, truth, and heart that save people in the end. Thank you to the one who didn't leave. We'll meet again in the next journey. Still justice, still trust. And maybe another gavel, another dog, or another human who believes enough not to give up. Because some waits deserve an ending.